Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Series Strategy Gamer and I'm very excited because we are starting a new series of Democracy 4 today. So, what we want to do is we want to continue our trend of taking a country and turning it on its head. So, we've turned Germany into a super capitalist country, we've turned the United Kingdom into a socialist country, and the United States into an environmental country. Next on our list is France. So let's look at France over here and think about what we can do. Now, France is very famous in political circles for one thing, and that is it's a very laicist country. That is, it has a very strong separation of the church and the state. So these things are not allowed to mix at all, and this is what I think we want to take on over here, and we want to go for an achievement here in the run on France, and we are going to go for the Holy Justice Alliance, or you know what, the Defenders of the Faith is I think one of the, let's pick the Defenders of the Faith, and we are going to go for an ultra-religious run. And it's not just going to be any type of religion, it is of course going to be going for the achievement here of Praise the Lord, which I think in previous version was called something like, well, I didn't quite know, but basically we're going to go for the Praise the Lord society here, and this is going to be tough because it means pretty much everyone in our country needs to be religious, firstly, and secondly we are going to go for some not so nice policies, I would say, like things like compulsory church attendance over here. That's not going to be very nice, I admit. And at this point, of course, my usual disclaimer, I do not actually advocate to make France into an ultra-religious state, but this is a Let's Play of a game, so please recognize that and don't give me any flack in the comments. So, that being said, we want to go for a dystopian version this time, and go for compulsory church attendance, school prayers, all that kind of thing that is maybe not so nice. We probably want to ban foreign church services as well. So that's going to be the one cornerstone here. And the other one is, I thought, okay, you know what, let's do that a little bit more. Let's also go for the achievement wrapped in the flag, which does mean we need to be ultra-patriotic as well. So we're going to go for this dystopian version here of an ultra-religious, ultra-nationalistic society where sort of everyone is forced into, into certain norms. I don't think it's going to be a nice run, and it is probably going to be one that I struggle with the most of all of these runs. Firstly, because it's not necessarily the way I tend to view things politically, but secondly, because there are some complications here. And I think there are at least two big complications. Firstly, this is France, and France has a lot of problems going on, as you can see by these little red things. Now, just as a brief reminder for those of you who haven't seen that, we do need to spend political capital, which is going to be granted to us by our ministers, as you can see over here, these 7 people over here, for these various areas. In each of these areas, we've got certain policies, like, for example, rubber bullets, which make liberals, in this case, less happy. We've also got other policies here that do influence these blue things. These are statuses in our economy. For example, our economy itself, the GDP, is being influenced by a lot of things. It also influences other things, and that's all that. We also got these red things, which are generally not nice things. So, for example, we've got street gangs over here. That is being largely driven by unemployment and poverty, and that does cause quite a couple of things. Less happiness on the retired people, less happiness on the conservatives, and so on and so forth. So, France does have a lot of these red things, and it's not going great. Specifically on the economy, we've got a corporate exodus due to the high levels of taxation and the labor laws. We've also got an unproductive economy. All of these things do lead to a relatively low GDP, which just generally is not very good, and which has various consequences. One of the most important ones is we've got a huge deficit. You can see we are running a deficit per quarter of 24 billion euros. That's about a fifth of our entire income, so our budget deficit here is a whooping 17% or so of what we are spending is basically just deficit. So yeah, we will need to address that in some time. So that's the one big challenge for us. It's just not in a good state. The second thing that we do need to consider is the way that the game works, this run is going to be much more complicated than the previous ones. And let me briefly explain that. When we did run into the capitalist versus socialist runs, whenever we introduced something that was, let's say, making the capitalists happy, it would typically make socialists unhappy. Now, there are a couple of taxation things here that influence the membership. And the way that this works is, in this game, you're either capitalist, you can see 43% of the population are capitalist, or you are socialist, let me find that, so that should be 57%. So you're always either one or the other. And that does mean if you're influencing the membership of socialists by a policy that makes socialists more happy and more numerous, you typically depress the happiness of capitalists, but you also depress the number of capitalists. So you always have that balance between making someone happy and making someone else unhappy, but at the same time you're changing the constitution of the population. So that's kind of nice, and that does help you out a lot. But that's not true for religious people, and it's not true for patriots. So if you see patriots, currently 9% of the population, that's not a lot of them, but there's no group that is non-patriot, or there's no group that is specifically non-religious. And that does mean that if you're increasing the percentage of the religious people, so if you're increasing the membership here, that's going to be all nice and things, but it does not lead to less opposition. So we will be screwing with other groups who will be opposing our religious tendencies, but we will not at the same time decrease their percentage of the population just by using religious policies. And that is going to make this run much more difficult, because if we look at these policies, let's take for example here secularity of education. Now if we move that to, let's say, a religious method, you can see that religious people would be much more happy. Currently they are neutral, that would give them a 13% boost, but it would make liberals very, very unhappy. In this case, we're actually lucky, because this has a separate effect on liberalism, so it would actually depress the amount of liberals and increase the number of religious people. But not all of these policies go that way, and a lot of them, in fact, will not. So we will be heavily opposed by the liberals, and I expect that currently there are quite a couple of liberals here. Yeah, it's most of the population do consider themselves to be liberal, so we will need to address their membership as well. And there are a couple of things that we can do, but most things that do influence the membership of liberals are in fact giving rise to conservatives. Because here again you have that method where everyone who's not a liberal, so the, let's say, 43 point something percent should be conservatives. So yeah, you can see 43% of the people are conservatives. So there this balance comes into play, where you're either a member or you're a member of either of these groups. And therefore we need to face a decision. Do we introduce religious policies and increase the happiness of the liberals, so that we're trying to counteract our policies in a way and just try to maintain the happiness of liberals, or do we double down on them and actually increase conservatives' value as well? I think we're going to do the latter. So we are actually going to boost the happiness and membership of conservatives. That should depress the amount of liberals, but that is going to make the liberals who remain incredibly unhappy, and we will need to deal with that. And I think they will probably make some attempts on our life, probably. So yeah, there is terrorism, and I do think that at some point we're going to see some issues there, and we will need to be ready for that. So that is the second big difficulty here. The third one is that just religious policies in general, the ones that we are looking at, are quite controversial, you would think, like this. And you can see, for example, banning homosexuality, which I hate to do, but nevertheless it does cost 48 political power, so that's quite a bit, and we will need to balance quite carefully that we can actually even get this amount of political capital. You can see currently we are earning 16 per turn. That does mean that we can stock up to 32 political power, And we will just need to increase the overall amount if we are ever going to get to 48%. And that does indeed mean we will need to quite carefully manage all of our ministers here and pick some good choices here. So, that was the run of, or that was the premise of this little run. Let's start out by doing some things. And I think what we do need to do as one of the first things is start to address some of these issues down here. Specifically, things like the uncompetitive economy and the corporate exodus. They do give a huge negative boost to our GDP. And a huge negative boost to GDP, of course, is quite dramatically bad for us because that does, among other things, influence all of the income that we are generating from our quite generous taxation, actually. So we do need to reduce our deficit, otherwise everything will snowball to death. Secondly, a lot of our ministers, I expect, will, to some degree or other, probably be capitalist. And as you can see, capitalists are among the least happy groups that currently exist, and that is due to corporate exodus and corporation tax and all of these taxations. So we will need to place them at least a little bit. We're not going to play directly into their hand, but at least to some extent we'll want to solve that. Secondly, let's look at the other negative things that are about. We've got a rail strike here, which is largely driven by various things. It does lead to some negative effects on GDP. Commuters dislike it, so it's just generally not good. We also got a doctor strike, I think, which does massively decrease the happiness of parents and the health level, so that's just really not great. And I do think, did it not influence also the happiness of retired people? I thought it did. Okay, now that's another one, that is hospital overcrowding. So, yeah. Retired people, not happy. Parents, not happy. Parents must absolutely hate us, actually. Yeah, they do. They absolutely do. And lastly, the all-time classic here, respiratory disease due to just the state of the environment. All of these are very bad things. Last one, just in the law and order category, is we've got street gangs to top it all off. This one is actually kind of interesting because it decreases the number of liberalism, or the number of liberals. So that's actually good for us because people see unrest on the street, they tend to be a little bit more conservative and wish for the strong arm of the law. So that's actually pretty good. On the other hand, everyone hates it. They don't perceive us as a strong leader. Everyone hates it. Conservatives hate it in particular. Retired people hate it in particular. Tourism is going to go down. Crime and violent crime are going to go up. So all of these things are something that we need to address. But I think the first one is the budget deficit. The budget deficit is, to I think a very large extent, driven by the uncompetitive economy and the corporate exodus, which is 21%. So that's pretty drastic. We will need to do something about that. And you can see the things that are driving that. Now, corporation tax, I would love to decrease that. I think it is leading to some very bad effects over here. But I don't think we necessarily can reduce that too much because we are already running a budget deficit. I don't want to reduce our income too much. And this is not a capitalist run. So the other big impact on corporate exodus is the labor laws. And these are a little bit more interesting because not only do they lead to the corporate exodus, they also give rise to the rail strike, doctor strike, and various other things that I just don't think are very good for us. So it's also depressing productivity. So the very pro-union labor laws here are a problem for France. And I think that's actually fairly valid. So we want to probably shift them all the way over here to pro-employer. Thing is, we can't do that. It would cost us 24 political power. Currently we only have 16. So I don't want to do that right now, but that is something that we want to save up for. So let's get to 24 political power. That does mean we can spend only 8. And that is a little bit less than I was thinking that we could. But I guess that's... Is it really that? Probably changed in between my first look at this and now. So that is slightly unfortunate. But we will get around that. So basically we have 8 political power to spend this time. I don't think there is much that we can do in regards to existing policies. But can we do something... Well, we could do something like flags on every street, which is nice, but really not the most important element that we've got over here. But honestly, I would like to start with a religious policy, even if it's not the very best play. So I think the one thing that we can do probably is we're going to get rid of gender transition. Personally, I don't know why you would get rid of that, but it's just the way it is. So religious people really hate that currently, conservatives hate that, liberals like it. It's leading to a tiny bit more healthcare demand, and it's actually increasing the membership in liberalists. So if we get rid of this, let's cancel that policy, and we are going to make the religious people just a little bit more happy. Can I cancel that policy? Yes. There we go. That did cost us 7 political power. We've got a little bit left, but not really that much, but still religious people should now be a little bit more happy, and that is nice to see. Good. Let's go to the next turn over here and see what we've got in terms of developments. Unemployment is coming down nicely. That's good to see. Crime is actually coming down too. Poverty, likewise. All of these are good to see. Education is actually coming up. Very lovely. Health is coming up. I didn't know. Right. Here's a question about deporting or allowing some people to stay. Now, since we're going to go for the sort of dystopian run, we're going to deport them. It's going to lead to patriots and conservatives being a little bit more happy and us being considered a strong leader. So yeah, I think that is very nice. Good. Popularity is also actually coming up already, so that's lovely to see. Good. Right, we've got enough political power. Let's tackle the labour law issue. We're going to go to basically pro-employer ones. That is going to give huge negative effects here on, or reduce the positive effects on doctor strike, rail strike and corporate exodus. That's nice. Working week is going to go up. Trade unionists are going to dislike that. Socialists a little bit. But also trade unionists and socialist membership is going to go down. So I think all in all that should be alright-ish. Yeah. Let's apply these changes. It's going to cost us a lot of political power. We don't really have that much left. But we do have a little bit left, so that's nice to see. Can we increase anything that we want to increase? Gender Discrimination Act? No. Community policing is typically a good one, so I do like that. Family planning is not something that we want to touch. Smart meter program? Yeah, I'm just basically looking at all of these green things that we've got over here. Junk food tax is actually already there, so that's lovely to see. Drug treatment, Foreign language classes, no, I don't think we need any of these really. I think we are more or less fine. We could increase these subsidies here. Unfortunately, we don't really have the money to do that, so on the other hand, the environment would greatly benefit from that, and that might ultimately lead to some better respiratory diseases here. Actually, environmentalists love us already. Right, let's go for the telecommuting initiative, because I think it's just generally one of the best policies that you've got. Car usage is going to go down dramatically, and sort of everyone likes it. Telecom industry is also going to benefit from that, so I think that's okay. Right, so that's the biggest issues out of the way. Let's see how that is going to impact everything. So I would hope that GDP comes up a little bit over time here, and that would certainly be lovely. Crime is coming down. That's nice to see. Torture, yeah, we're still going to deport him because we are just not very compassionate in this playthrough. And still, you know, please recognize I'm not doing this against religious people. This is a very specific form of religious fundamentalist France that we are looking at here. Right. So let's look at the effects over here. So the labour laws have changed over here, but this has a delay of 4 turns. So that means this is going to take some time here to come into effect. But I do think it's going to be alright. It is going to drop that down to a degree that should basically cut this out over at least a short amount of time. So I think that's going to be okay. Car usage, same thing. This is going to take a while to come into effect. And it is coming down already. So I think that is fairly lovely. You can actually see that the labour laws here do still have a positive impact over here. So the rail strike is still a big issue over here, and our deficit has actually increased, which to some extent is because the global economy is turning down, which is not nice. Yeah, and we really need to look at our income and our expenditures. Now, our income is actually not that bad. I mean, income tax is alright-ish, so our tax levels are kind of high. It's just that the base level of GDP doesn't follow that. So I think it's still prudent to try to tackle that as one of our first things over here. The other thing is we've got our expenditures, and you can see one of the sort of top 5 items, top 6 items maybe, it's actually the state rail company. The highest expenditures that we've got are state pensions, and I think I would like to bring them down, but not altogether too aggressive, because otherwise yeah, we're going to face some issues over time. So yeah, the retired people are already not that happy, so let's hold off on that for now. But I do think the state rail company over here is largely feeding into the rail strike. It doesn't really have any greatly beneficial things over here, and it is costing us 6 billion per quarter, so that's a large proportion here of our overall fund. So I'm going to cancel that policy. We're going to get some income here actually from privatization. It does not leave us with a lot of political power, but I think that's going to be alright. Do we want to increase or decrease anything else? Yeah, the clean energy subsidies are tempting. Smart meter program is nice-ish, but doesn't really change a lot. Small business grants, now that is a great policy actually, especially since it does directly improve GDP and a lot of happiness modifiers here. Thing is, we don't really have enough political power to do that right now, so I think we're just going to go for the next turn over here and see what's going to happen. So GDP should come up. Very nice, that's good to see. Unemployment coming down, that's also great to see. And everything else is sort of nice. Oh, we're getting some territory back, that's lovely to see. We are going to get the gig economy. That's not the worst thing in the world. And I think that's largely due to the fact that we've liberalized our labor laws. But still, okay, you can see the rail strike here basically collapsed, so that is going to go away. Lovely. How is the uncompetitive economy? Coming down slowly. Corporate exodus, you should really start to drop down at some point over here. It's going to take a while, but at some point you really should come into effect. Doctor strike, you should also look much better than you're currently doing. Although I'm not sure that it's going to be enough what we did so far. Yeah, well, at the very least the parents don't dislike us quite as hard. This is going to take a while to be tackled. Hospital overcrowding, that's also going to take a while. At least our deficit has somewhat improved, largely due to the fact that we decreased our spending over here. But yeah, we do need more money. We definitely do need more money. Right, we are generating still around 16 political capital, so that is lovely to see. And I think one of the... We do need to stay within the realms of, you know, tackling the issue here with religious people and trying to get more people to be religious. And I think one of the first things that we should really look at is this item here. Legalize sex work. That's just not going to work for me. So it's increasing GDP by a little bit actually, which is nice. Liberals are happy about that. Parents are not so happy, but religious people and conservatives really, really hate that. So we're going to cancel that policy. It's going to cost us 10 political power, but I think it is going to be great just to make everyone a little bit more happy. Right, the other issue I had was, I think CCTV. Yeah, we can't bring that up enough though. So let's look at the small business grants over here. Right, that's you, right? So if we bring you up, you're going to cost us 3 billion. That's not nothing, but I do think the boost in GDP here is going to be very useful for that. Let's apply these changes and get more get the economy going a little bit better over time. We're still running the uncompetitive economy over here. That is largely driven, I think, by the productivity. Or to formulate it differently, if productivity was higher, this could go away. And this is coming up very lovely over here, but I don't think it is going to be enough. Working week is going to improve that, but it has already. Education could be a little bit better. And education might actually be the way to go over here. So it's only gonna be a tiny increase. Okay, let's forget about that for now. I think we're better off saving some political capital. Do you want to do anything else over here? Pollution controls are typically useful, but they do depress GDP. At least a little bit. Also, they do help the environment, so yeah, I think it's alright if we keep them as is. Anything else we can do to directly support the economy here? Yeah, the environment is quite important, but I do think like business startup campaign is not directly increasing that, so that's hold on off from that. International trade is useful, but I guess National Business Council here is going to be the most useful thing that we can do. Increasing GDP, lovely, capitalists a little bit more happy, and socialists are not actually unhappy about that, so yeah, I think it's a good policy that we have got over here. Right, very nice. Street gangs are done for, which is lovely. I don't actually know why. I think probably our poverty went down and our unemployment. Yeah, unemployment did end that, so that's good to see. Crime is basically non-existent now, and GDP is actually doing much better now. Rail strike is gone. Organized crime is seeing a resurgence over here. We will need to deal with that at some point, but for now it's not a big issue. And we are gonna approve the ban of livestock over here, even though it's gonna depress our GDP for a little while. But still, overall, I think we are doing slightly better here. We are closing our deficit ever so slightly. The big issue is that debt to GDP here is starting to rise, and that can, as we've seen in the socialist run, lead to a death spiral of doom, which is not necessarily the greatest for us. Right, we've dealt with sex work, we've dealt with the gender transition, so that is all very nice. I think one of the things that I would like to do is actually increase the CCTV cameras over here. And the reason why I want to do that is it does upset liberals. Crimes and violent crimes is going to go down. That's not very important. Conservatives do like it. That's nice for us. But this is actually one of the largest impacts you can have on liberalist membership. So I don't exactly know why, but apparently if there are more cameras around, people do tend to be a little bit more conservative. So honestly, let's go with that. It's going to cost us 10 political power here. That's not nothing, but it is going to affect one of these long-term changes that probably we do want to see. Let's briefly check. So for now, conservatives are still a little bit less happy than liberals, I think. No, actually they are a little bit more happy. So changing the setup over there is gonna push that into the right direction, I think, and that is indeed very nice to see. Now, another thing that we might want to look at is the productivity here has spiked a little bit, which is nice, but one of the depressing things about productivity is actually alcohol consumption. Alcohol consumption does have quite a couple of negative things here. It's increasing healthcare demand, violent crime, depressing productivity. So all in all, that does not really bode well for us, and it's only going to get worse as GDP increases. Although the decline here in poverty is actually a nice thing about that. That being said, if we do look at the alcohol laws here, I think we would have a good time changing that in a way. Let's go for the next turn over here, get some things, and we've got a couple of things here actually going for us, so that's lovely to see. GDP is increasing, and that actually has led to a very funny effect over here, and that is our credit rating has been upgraded, even though we are running a deficit. So we are still spending more than we are earning. We are increasing our debt, but since our GDP has increased more, this ratio here has actually come down, and that's very lovely, because one of the other things that is going to depress is our interest expense. Yeah, debt interest is a whooping 18 billion, so even if we had no debt, we'd be running a surplus over here, and that'd be great. So we are already running primary surplus, to say the technical term, and that is very, very nice. So, we do have some political power. Let's go ahead and ban alcohol, basically. It's going to lead to a lot less alcohol consumption. Liberals hate it, the young people hate it, liberalist membership is going to go down. But I do think this is a very appropriate policy because it's just very, very fitting, I think, for religious playthrough to limit that, and that is ultimately also going to improve our productivity. So I'm going to be very super heavy about that. Corporate exodus, you're finally starting to come down, and I think you'll be gone soon, so that's lovely to see. Uncompetitive economy, that is still a big issue here, but I think we are going to see that is going to come down over time, at least a little bit. Maybe we'll have to address that via corporate taxation as well. That being said, I think now is a very good place to put in a cut. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys are with me for that slightly weird run here. Slightly dystopian, but, you know, humble beginnings. We've only outlawed gender transition, sex work, and alcohol so far, but it's gonna get much worse next time around. So, looking forward to see you then. Bye bye, guys.